Staying in the political sphere, the Political Action Committee set on electing former Vice President Joe Biden has formed, but is comprised of former Republican officials from the Trump and Bush administrations. For more on this, we're actually joined by Matt Borges, who is the founder of the Right Side PAC. Matt, thank you so much for joining us here today and taking the time. Tell us about the group that you formed and what your strategy is for presenting the case for preventing President Trump's reelection.
Thanks so much for having me on this morning. I really appreciate it. Yeah, we're the Right Side PAC, rightsidepac.com. And we are an organization that was founded by Republicans that have soured on President Trump. And we're looking for voters who are like us, Republicans, and targeting swing areas and swing districts and the states that will likely make up the difference to get to 270 electoral votes this fall. And what we're looking for are Republicans who feel the way we do, that have really lost faith in this particular president, maybe voted for him in 2016 like I did, but don't intend to vote for him again. And the issue that we have with voters who might feel that way is that come November, they really have four options. One would be hold their nose and vote for the president anyway. Another would be to throw your vote away on a third party candidate. Another would be to just sit the election out. The fourth option, the option that folks really need to be able to embrace, is actually voting for the Democrat, voting for Joe Biden. And that's the message that we're trying to deliver to folks who believe that this president is an existential threat to this country and to this party.
You're in Darby, Pennsylvania. I grew up in Westchester, not too far down the main line, not too far from where you're at right now. When you think about Pennsylvania as a state, the battleground state that it is, you have Joe Biden that's holding a narrow lead over President Trump, according to some polls right now. What's the pulse in Pennsylvania that you're getting among voters who did vote for Trump during 2016's election and that are now considering potentially voting for Biden?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be important for the rest of the cycle to not pay all that close attention to the day-to-day polling. It's really going to be a matter of continuing to draw people to our cause. And in our case, what we want to do, we're not going to try to make Joe Biden out to be something that he isn't. We're not going to try to pretend to Republicans that he's some rock-ribbed conservative. But when you compare his life and his conduct in office, and quite frankly, his record, to what Donald Trump has shown us over the last 3.5 years, when it comes to matters of spending, when it comes to matters of respecting our allies, of states' rights, of free trade, of these principles that have been embedded in the core of what Republicans have cared about ever since I got involved in this business 30 years ago, and helped Republicans get elected all over the country. At the end of the day, we want these voters who have already soured on the president to know that they can feel good about their vote for Joe Biden. And so we're digging into the data and we're doing the research to make sure we find those voters and communicate with them directly.
Just quickly, while we have you as well, a recent poll from CNBC and Change Research showing Biden leading in 6 key swing states. Some races are tight, nearly tied in Arizona, 7-point lead in Florida, 2 points in Michigan and in North Carolina. Biden has a 3-point edge in Pennsylvania, as we were talking about there, a narrow margin, and 4 points in Wisconsin. In 2016, these polls showed Hillary Clinton with leads in some of these states. Should the Biden campaign be feeling confident right now?
I think the most important thing that we can do altogether is ignore those polls entirely, just pretend they don't exist, and go out and do the things that we feel like we need to do. We are only going to be a small part of what the Biden campaign will be doing on a much larger scale. We want to make a difference on the margins with these voters that we know well and we can talk to. We're operatives who have done this for a long time and know how to motivate these voters and turn them out. We're going to have record numbers of people participating in this election in the early voting period because of the situation we find ourselves in with COVID-19 and how that may impact Election Day. So making sure we're talking to voters during the early voting period and absentee voting, vote by mail, where they have those programs across the country,
Right.
And it really is those 6 key states that we're going to be focused on as well.
I think you make a great point. It's about showing up on election day for so many voters as well. When you think about your former role as the GOP chair in Ohio, you have particular friction with President Trump. New York Times reporting that before he took office, President-elect Trump personally intervened and tried to have you removed from your position. Why should people believe that the PAC was formed with America's best interest in mind and not your own?
Well, I have a lot to lose potentially by doing this at all, and it is a departure for me. It's a once and hopefully only time in my lifetime that I'll be supporting a Democrat, certainly for president. And I'm going to vote for every other Republican on the ballot this year, and I'm going to continue to help Republicans get elected this year and after this is over. But I really see this as a turning point, and what is personal to me is the future of the party that I've helped to work on and build and make progress on and help great people get elected over the course of the last 30 years. And just, the behavior, the self-dealing, anytime you can apply a fact pattern and say to yourself, what would Republicans have thought if Barack Obama or Bill Clinton had done the exact same thing, and know that we would have gone absolutely crazy about it. We need to be consistent. And when we see Donald Trump doing things that we don't think are right and we don't believe in, we can't just sit by. We've got to stand up. And I think we're past the point, at least for me, of him earning and having the opportunity to earn my support in 2020. So a lot of us who felt this way decided not to just talk to each other about it. We decided to take action. We formed this political action committee, and we're moving forward.
Okay, 2 quick topics I want to hit on here. A report in the New York Times this morning suggests that aides worry President Trump is self-sabotaging his campaign and actually doesn't want to be reelected. Scaramucci quoted in this article. Do you think that could be true?
I have no insight into the president's mindset. I certainly have spoken with him many times, although it's been a few years now since we've been in communication. I got to know him a little bit in the 2016 election. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, like everyone else, have observed his behavior and his mindset for the last many years. And I, for one, don't believe that he's not fully committed to running for re-election. We certainly have to treat it that way. And yes, Vice President Biden is ahead in most polls that you see, most state polls, most national polls. None of those things matter. Obviously you have to do all the work to make sure you turn out the voters that you think are going to support you. Otherwise, those polls don't mean a thing when it comes to election day. So I think the president's got a lot of fight left in him, and it's almost certainly going to be a close election. So I really do think that that programs like ours are going to matter a lot.
And then just lastly, while we have you here, on social media, there's been a lot of talk, a lot of debate about how some are using the anti-racism and Black Lives Matter and not supporting this anti-racism movement and saying, hey, that's just my politics. What do you say to people that are saying and trying to position it as a political statement when it actually is not a political statement there? What do you say to voters that are using that as a defense for supporting the Republican Party right now?
Well, look, I mean, there's no question right now we're seeing a sea change in our country, excuse me, and it's something that any political consultant and any candidate, any office holder, any public official worth their salt wouldn't ignore, and it's happening. It's a dynamic that's changing the face of the country, changing attitudes everywhere about how we look at these issues. And I think in a good way. We call ourselves the Right Side PAC because we want to be Republicans on the right side of history. And history is unfolding right in front of our very eyes every day here right now with these issues, with what's happening with COVID, how we're going to emerge from that, the economy, et cetera. And we really believe the right side of history is to get a person who has proven himself to be a divisive force and really not on top of the issues that are facing us right now out of the White House and begin to rebuild, for our sake, our country. And then, from what we're looking at, also the Republican Party. So that's the critical first step. And that's why we're engaged in what we're doing.
All right, Matt Borges, who's the founder of the Right Side PAC, joining us here today. Thanks so much for the time, Matt.